Hello, I'm Kathy Peterson, a volunteer with the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce. You're watching Business Connection, a production of the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber is committed to finding business solutions by collaborating with regional business leaders on key issues. Joining us today, we have Chris Kirschner, Vice President of Public Policy and Economic Development with the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce. Welcome, Chris. We also have Carlos Laparo from Protect Your Vote, Ohio. Now, today we are going to be talking about redistricting reform and a November ballot initiative that attempts to address the Ohio redistricting issue. Can you please explain, Chris, how the current redistricting, and I'm not going to get that right, but process in Ohio works?
Thanks, Kathy. Yes, I can absolutely explain that. Currently, the redistricting process is done every 10 years after the decennial census. That process involves what's called the Ohio Apportionment Board. It's a 7-member panel made up of the Governor of Ohio, the Secretary of State of Ohio, the Auditor of Ohio, and then 2 members from the majority party in the House of Representatives and 2 members from the minority party in the House of Representatives and the Senate. So you have 3 of the statewide elected officials, and then you have 2 from each party in both the House and the Senate. So it's a diverse group. Depending on who is elected to those positions, depends on who makes up the apportionment board. Some years it could be all Republicans or all Democrats, or some years it could be a mix of both. It really depends. It's up to the Ohio voters who is elected to those positions and who is put on the Ohio Apportionment Board. The Ohio Apportionment Board then drafts what's called goes through the redistricting process and drafts both the state legislative lines as well as the congressional district lines. After that's drafted, it's then sent to the Ohio legislature for approval. So our 99-member Ohio House of Representatives and our 32-member Ohio Senate both must consider those legislative maps and congressional maps and vote on them and approve them. So there's a process in place right now that both represents the diverse needs of the state and also has elected officials that are accountable to Ohio voters that are in place and work on the redistricting process.
And it sounds like a very interesting process also.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now Carlos, you're with the statewide campaign that's actually opposing Issue 2 and encouraging a no vote on the November ballot. Now, Issue 2 appears to be a bit confusing. Now, can you explain the details of Issue 2 and explain your concerns with Issue 2?
Absolutely. Issue 2 is one of those things that the more you look at it, the worse it gets. It is very poorly drafted. It's a complicated issue, and what it attempts to do is it attempts to take a cookie-cutter approach to a process that requires a lot of debate, a lot of discussion, and bipartisan consideration. In a nutshell, what Issue 2 would do is it takes away the people's voice in the redistricting and a apportionment process through their elected representatives and gives that authority to an unelected, unaccountable bureaucratic commission. And now the devil's in the details with this proposal, because that commission, not accountable to the taxpayers, it's not accountable to their elected representatives, but the amendment gives that commission the authority to set their own pay, hire permanent staff, consultants and lawyers, and go about the process. You know, there are a lot of flaws in that process, but the lack of accountability, the fact that it wasn't very well thought out, are one of the things that causes us great concern and causes a lot of respected organizations across Ohio great concern, who are also advocating a no vote on Issue 2.
It sounds like it is. It's stirring up a lot of conversation.
Absolutely.
Now, Chris, has the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce taken a position as far as opposing or supporting Issue 2?
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. We have. The Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce actually voted to oppose Issue 2 on the November ballot initiative. The reason for that opposition is couched within a couple of prefaces that really help set the tone for why we're opposed to it. The Chamber understands that there is concerns with the current redistricting process. We know that the current redistricting process needs to be looked at. Just this area, we lost 1 congressional seat this past redistricting process. That's concerning to us. You know, for us to be effective in Washington, D.C., and for the community's voice to be heard, we need to make sure we have fair representation here. So we have actively said that there needs to be a hard look at the current redistricting process and changes considered. So we're not against change. We are absolutely for change being considered in this process. What we're against is this specific proposal that is dubbed Issue 2 for the November ballot. Our members have come to us and they've said that this issue is convoluted, that it takes away accountability and takes away accountability to the Ohio voters, and it gives them a blank checkbook to spend whatever they want to get the job done, regardless of Ohio's fiscal situation. So regardless of the Ohio budget and where we are fiscally, if things are strained in Ohio, they could still spend whatever they need on the redistricting process. Additionally, it creates a 12-member commission. Right now we have a 7-member commission. This creates a 12-member commission that is appointed, not elected. The current commission is elected, so you have voters that have chosen to put these individuals in place. Under this proposal, they would not be elected and they could not be removed by Ohio voters either. Additionally, there's a million different caveats that eliminate people who have knowledge of the process from even serving on the commission. So if anybody's ever given money to a political candidate, or if they've ever served in any capacity with state government, they're removed from being able to be considered for that, for serving on the commission. However, there was something that was mysteriously absent, and that was that if you were ever part of a labor union in Ohio, you could serve on the commission. So it was interesting when we were looking through through some of the caveats on people that were excluded. That was one that wasn't excluded, and as you know, labor unions are very politically involved in the state, so it seemed interesting that they were not exempt from serving on the commission. So you have this commission then that's a 12-member commission, unaccountable, unelected, with a blank checkbook. That was what couched the Dayton Chamber's opposition to Issue 2. And we're going to be working diligently up until the November election to make sure our members know why Issue 2 is bad policy. It's about good government, but it's bad policy. And we want to make sure our members know why that isn't right for them, why it's not right for Ohio, and that we're going to work towards another proposal that is different from this one for them to consider in the future.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned you had heard from members. Mm-hmm. And Carlo, you go all over the state and hear from different organizations. What are some of the things that you're hearing about Issue 2? Absolutely, and I think Chris echoed many of the sentiments about Issue 2. And the fact of the matter is that it just wasn't very well thought out. The folks who put this amendment together, while they could be very well-meaning, they didn't do a very good job with a very complicated issue. And as Chris was saying, it excludes thousands of Ohioans from participating in this process simply because someone that they're related to was a legislative page, for example, had some involvement in state or federal government, for example. But the flaw is that if you had involvement in city or county government, you're allowed to participate. So you can be a county commissioner, you can be a city council member, you can work for those folks, and we all know that they're all part of the political process, and they're very political. They're included in this, but if you're in the legislature, if your son or daughter took the summer and worked at the Ohio General Assembly, very prestigious for a young adult, they're excluded from the process. And that all goes to the poor drafting of this amendment. But that's not all. What it does is it takes the Ohio judiciary and brings them into this process in a very political way. And that's why the Ohio State Bar Association, the Ohio Judicial Conference, which represents all judges in Ohio, as well as several legal scholars and appellate court judges said, hey, we need to take another look at this, because what Issue 2 does is it draws the judiciary into the political process. It causes great conflicts of interest for many judges, because judges will be required to select a lot of these commission members. And they would be lobbied by political interests. But then you take this commission, this 12-member commission, and theoretically they are supposed to be devoid of politics. They're supposed to be disinterested in the process. But they're supposed to be involved in one of the most inherently political processes that we have, and that's the drawing of congressional and state legislative districts. Now, we have an example of what happens when you take a group of disinterested people and put them in this process. It happened in California.
And what happened in California is you had, good-meaning people, but folks who didn't have experience in the political process thrust into this position of creating, these highly political and important congressional legislative districts. And now the political parties, the political operatives, they have access to mapping equipment, a lot of complicated programs that deal with demographics and other things, and they know what they want. And what they did in California is they were able to take these commissioners and game the system to get what they wanted. And it was very well documented. ProPublica, which does amazing investigative work, they're very nonpartisan, they took a look at the California process, and what they found is that while it was meant to be a fair process, the reality is that you can't take politics out of a political process, but when you take people who have no experience of that process and put them in charge, and put them up against political professionals, they're not going to be able to do the job. And that's what happened in California. That's what we want to prevent in Ohio. What we want in Ohio is a process that has complete buy-in by both political parties, that goes through a legislative process where there's give and take, where the media and the people can scrutinize every aspect of the proposal to make sure that when we do something, we do it right, and we put something into the Constitution, it's something that can stand the test of time. Now, we're not here saying that the current process is a process that needs to be in place in perpetuity. We're not. We know that there are ways to improve the process. It's not a perfect process. It's flawed, and in fact, it's time to take a look at doing things differently. Issue 2 is not the way to do it. That's why the State Bar Association, Ohio Judicial Conference, the Dayton Chamber of Commerce, the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, but also the Cleveland Chamber of Commerce, the Cincinnati Chamber, the Columbus Chamber, as well as the Farm Bureau Federation. Today, the Ohio CPAs Association came out opposed to issue 2. Every serious group that takes a hard look at this issue comes away with concerns about it, and comes to the conclusion that while there's a better way to do redistricting, this is not the way to do it.
How do you go about working on something like this? How do you, I don't know, fight issue 2, I guess, to put it simply?
Well, like I said, the more you look at it, the worse it gets. There are a lot of flaws in the process. There are holes. It's poorly drafted. It excludes some groups but doesn't exclude others. It creates a system that, while it says it'll try to take politics out of the process, that's not the case. It highly politicizes, the process. It takes away a lot of the disclosure requirements and a lot of the safeguards that we currently have in place that apply to elected officials, and allows for situations that may not always be in the public light. There's a better way to do it, and we feel the better way to do it is to step back, bring both parties together, and agree on a plan that we can have moving forward, that we can put into the Constitution, that's debated, well thought out, vetted in the media. You give the voters an opportunity to take a look at every aspect of it, and then put that in the Constitution to improve our process.
Carlo, what is your strategy? I guess, what will you be doing between now and the November election?
Well, we're going to be talking directly to voters. We have several concerns about issue 2, and we want Ohioans to know that, while there are ways to improve our redistricting process, issue 2 is not the way to do it. We share the concerns of the Ohio State Bar Association, Ohio Judicial Conference, the Dayton Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Cleveland Partnership, the Columbus Chamber, the Cincinnati Chamber, and various groups across Ohio who say that, issue 2 improperly politicizes our judicial branch of government, which should remain impartial. It is poorly drafted, excludes thousands of Ohioans from a process, but includes others arbitrarily. There are a lot of flaws, and that we all agree that we can come together and put together a better process for redistricting. And that's what we need to look at in the future, something that's bipartisan in nature, something that is completely vetted by the media and the voters, and when we put it into the Constitution, it's there to last.
Now, Chris, what will you be doing as far as your working with the members of the Chamber?
Sure. Well, we're going to be working closely with our statewide association, the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, as well as the good folks at Protect Your Vote Ohio, to get the message out to not only our members in the Dayton area, but the entire business community. You know, we are a business trade association. We represent about 3,000 businesses in the Dayton area. But when it comes to an issue like this, we're going to work with all the businesses in the region to make sure they know how important it is to vote no on issue 2 this November. We have a lot of our internal media outlets. We have newsletters that go out to about 5,000 to 7,000 business representatives in the area. We're going to be working with those. We're going to be working with our local media partners to make sure that they are aware of the impacts that issue 2 will have on the business community and Ohio voters, and trying to get some, some earned media out there to make sure that they are aware that they can get that message out to the voters and their readership on the impact that issue 2 will have. Additionally, we're going to be working with the campaign to distribute literature. We're going to be trying to distribute literature the old-fashioned way with just passing out business to business, but we're also going to be using a lot of the technological advances and trying to drive people to the website, use our social media outlet, do whatever we can to help educate folks in the Dayton region about issue 2 and about our concerns with issue 2. Issue 2 is very confusing on its face, and that is not a mask. It is very confusing when you dive into the details on it. And we do believe that there is a better solution out there, and we want to work with the legislature to help identify what that solution is. During the political turmoil that we had with the current redistricting process, there was a redistricting task force that was formed. This task force has been charged with bringing recommendations to the table by the end of 2012 on how to change the redistricting process. We are pushing that task force to really make sure that they think hardly about the redistricting process and come to the table with some substantial reforms that can be considered. However, those reforms aren't going to be coming to the table till the December timeframe. We need to give them time to do their work, to do the job that they've been charged with, and if we can just vote no on issue 2 this November, that will give these folks time to bring those thoughtful recommendations to the table that not only will protect the redistricting process in Ohio, but will honor and respect Ohio voters by hopefully putting accountable folks that are mindful of the state budget scenario into place in the future redistricting process.
Now, Carlo, what would some of the, I guess, indirect consequences be if issue 2 passed?
Well, like we talked about before, what it will do is will take away the people's voice in the redistricting process through their elected representatives and give that process to an unelected bureaucratic commission that has the ability to set its own salary, hire permanent staff, consultants, and attorneys. And that funding stream is written into the Constitution under issue 2. Now, don't get me wrong. The folks who put this amendment together and who are advocating it, have very good intentions. The fact of the matter is they didn't do a very good job in drafting it. There are a lot of flaws in the amendment, a lot of holes, a lot of things that are unanswered. And the devil is in the details of this amendment. There's a better way to do redistricting, but like I said before, issue 2 is not the way to do it. And we encourage voters who want more information on issue 2, who want to know about our concerns, the concerns of groups like the Dayton Chamber, the Ohio State Bar Association, the Ohio Judicial Conference, and others, to go to votenoonissue2.com. You'll see the information that we've laid out as a thoughtful critique of the issue, looking at every aspect of the proposal and pointing out how it could be done better and why it does not belong in the Ohio Constitution.
And Chris, you may have businesses out there saying, it really won't mean much to me because my business is still going to be in Dayton, or it's still going to be in Kettering, or wherever. How are you going to talk to them? What would you say to them?
Absolutely. Well, one of the things we pride ourselves on at the Chamber is being a resource to our members. So we're going to be actively and aggressively pursuing all of our members to make sure that they are aware of the impact that this will have on them if it is passed. Here's the great thing about our country and our state, Kathy. We have a representative form of government. We have a democracy here. Every voter has a vote. Every resident in Ohio has a vote. They use that vote to voice their opinion, whether it's about their business, about their personal feelings, or whatever it may be about. we have that representative form of democracy in which they can vote and elect people into office that they think best represents their needs. That will be taken away with this proposal. That democratic form of redistricting in which you elect folks that you think know how to do the redistricting process and can best do it with the mindset of what's best for all Ohioans in mind, that wouldn't exist anymore. And we don't believe that's good government. We believe that's bad government, and that's not the type of government that we want governing our business community. And from what we've heard from our members, that's not what our members want either. So we're going to be getting out there and making sure that they know the potential impacts that this could have, and that we believe that businesses should have input into the redistricting process. And maybe that input is through that democracy and a representative form of government in which you elect folks to serve you that you think will best represent your needs. But businesses do have specific geographic locations, and businesses need to know who is going to be representing them. It needs to not be confusing. Government has a big impact on business, and we want to work with our folks to make sure that they are aware of these consequences that could happen if Issue 2 is passed.
Let's say someone watching wants more information. Where can they learn more about Issue 2 and what's coming up?
Well, of course, they can go to voteno.issue2.com or Facebook or Twitter and do the search for Vote No on Issue 2 or the name of our organization, Protect Your Vote Ohio. There you'll find extensive information about what we feel are the shortcomings of this amendment and why it doesn't belong in the Ohio Constitution. But we'll also relay concerns of groups like the Dayton Chamber, the Ohio State Bar Association, the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation, and several others that have come out opposed to Issue 2 for a variety of reasons, all agreeing that there's a better way to do redistricting, but Issue 2 is not the way to do it.
Chris, will the Chamber have some resources available?
We absolutely will. Everybody, as all of our members know, they can feel free to pick up the phone and call me directly at any time. My direct dial number is 937-226-8289, or they can go to www.daytonchamber.org. We will be a resource for our members. We will be collecting their opinions. Even if they have concerns about our position on Issue 2, we would love to hear from them because I'd love to try to talk to them and help explain further what Issue 2 is about. But that's what we're here for. We're here to serve our members, and if our members want to know more information about Issue 2, we stand ready to give them whatever they need for them to make their own decision at the November ballot, or to pass out to their employees and make sure that the employees in their organizations are aware of the impacts that Issue 2 could have on them and their families.
And it is always a pleasure talking to you, so I encourage folks to give you a call.
Thanks, Kathy.
But you bring up a great point, that dialogue on any issue is so important because that's part of the education process and how we learn about things. So,
Absolutely.
So yes. Anything else that you two would like to add?
Well, I think it's important that we look at this process and understand that congressional redistricting and legislative apportionment is a very complicated process, and a process that needs time to reform. We need to, there's the old saying that sunlight is the best disinfectant. We need a process that is completely transparent and a process that has buy-in from both political parties that can be thoroughly scrutinized by the media as it's being developed. That's why we can't rush into an issue like redistricting, take a cookie cutter approach and put it into the Constitution. We need something that'll last the test of time. And that's why we're advocating that voters take a look at the amendment, and when they look at it, they'll see that the more they look at it, the worse it gets, and they should vote no on State Issue 2 this year.
All right, Carla Laparo from Protect Your Vote Ohio, Chris Kirshner from the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
I'm Kathy Peterson. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Business Connection. Now stay tuned for an important message from Phil Parker, the president of the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce.
Today's program highlighted a number of concerns being brought forward on upcoming November ballot Issue 2. This is one of the most poorly written ballot issues I've seen in years. It's seriously flawed, and in the end does not hold anyone accountable for the redistricting plan for Ohio. Not only is this proposed amendment to Ohio's Constitution not well thought out. It may even allow for those appointed to serve on this commission to do so with no accountability for their actions or their ethics. Currently, all of those who make these redistricting decisions every 10 years are elected by Ohio citizens and in the end must be held responsible for their actions. If the Ohio voters don't like the job they are doing, they must vote them out of public office. This proposed new process would also drag the judiciary into it, a concern that the Ohio State Bar Association considers inappropriate. They, along with nonpartisan groups from all over Ohio, are recommending that this amendment issue 2 not be adopted by Ohio citizens. I concur. We have a process that's been in place for years and reflects our democracy, a representative form of government where we elect or not those who represent the needs and will of Ohio's 11.5 million citizens. The Chamber has always stood for good government, and there are always ways to improve it. Unfortunately, issue 2 is not one of them. I'm voting no because this proposal is flawed and could cause irreparable harm to Ohio's ability to hold lawmakers and the redistricting process accountable.